Okay, friends. uh, as you settle into stillness, move your butt, rotate your butt around so you get a good grounding in whatever you're seating in. As you settle in, sense that you're pausing. It's time to pause. Arriving right here in presence. With a gentle attention, notice the state of your body right now. Take a full deep breath and release it slowly, slowly enough that you can feel the sensations of the exhale as your breath moves through your chest, your throat, your nostrils. Now allow your breath to resume its natural rhythm and sense that you can relax. Feel the pull of gravity and how the earth is supporting you. Bring your attention to yourself seated here and allow your eyes to close and relax more fully. Let the eyes and face be soft. Loosen the jaw. Let the shoulders relax and the arms and hands rest easily. So you're seated with a sense of dignity and alertness, and at the same time, a deep invitation of presence and relaxation. Notice in this simple presence, without judgment, the state of your body just now. Is it warm? Can you note cool or ease or tension? Notice too the state of your heart and mind, just as it is. Can you name racing or quiet, joyful or sad? Hold it all with a kind attention. Continue to simply be aware that you are here, feeling the subtle sensations of being present in this moment. Notice that you can become present in the midst of whatever's going on for you, whether it's pleasant, or whether there's pain, or worry, or tension. Mindfulness notices and relaxes around it all with a spacious and kind presence. Just notice whatever is present now and take a minute to relax with it all. And Pete?
All right. Thank you, Michael. I'm going to start with a brief biography of Karmapa Rangjung Dorje, the third Karmapa who wrote the text that we're looking at, which is called, write that down, Instructions for the Mahamudra Innate Union. So Karmapa Rangjung Dorje lived in 1284 to 1339. He was from Tingri County in Shigatse. It's north of Nepal and Bhutan in the Sang region of Tibet. That would be the kind of central Usang, they call it. U is the central region, I think, but Usang is the both together. They're both kind of central. He helped spread the Buddha nature teachings, which are very important for Mahayana. He was the Lama to the Chinese emperor in Beijing. He was born to a Nyingma family and held lineages of both Nyingma and Kagyu, which to this day, Karma Kagyu is kind of very Nyingma and Kagyu. Drigling Kagyu also has a lot of Nyingma influence too. He helped Dolpopa, who was, Dolpopa developed Shentong or other emptiness, and he helped Dolpopa develop that. Other emptiness refers to, it's kind of like the idea of Buddha nature, that there's an ultimate, you could say, being or awareness that is there, and everything else just falls away, hence the other emptiness of everything else. He wrote the Aspiration Prayer of Mahamudra, which is a very famous text. And so with that, we'll get started. So I'll read the introduction. Instructions for the Mahamudra Innate Union, Karmapa Rangjung Dorje, 1284 to 1339. I pay homage to the sublime gurus. The truly perfect Buddha Vajradhara taught glorious great Tilopa the introduction to the innate self-knowing wisdom. Tilopa taught this to glorious Naropa after his 12 great hardships. This introduction to the meaning of realization given to the followers of this path is in 3 parts. 1, the preliminaries. 2, the main practice, which consists of attaining a mental state of shamatha and an introduction to the innate meaning of vipassana. And 3, the teaching of the conclusion. I wanted to mention here that Naropa did these 12 great hardships, which purified his karma and demonstrated his resolve to practice the teachings. So it's not that everyone has to go through such hardships, but we all have to go through preliminary practices and purify negative karmas and things like that to take advantage of the wonderful Dharma teaching. Anyone have some thoughts to share on it? Okay. So I'll read about the preliminaries. The first meditation. A true guru with the necessary qualities only gives this teaching to pupils who practice properly, have abandoned the activities of this life, and are intent on attaining unsurpassable enlightenment. First of all, the guru gives the pupils the vows of correct conduct, sila, and bodhicitta. Then the guru gives them empowerments that completely ripen them. Then they should practice in a pleasant and solitary place. First, cutting through the body, speech, and mind's bondage to the world, sit in the key physical posture upon a comfortable seat. The legs are crossed, the hands are at resting level, the waist is straight, the throat is bent, and the eyes are looking toward the tip of the nose. Sitting naturally in this way is the key point for the body. So we're all familiar with that. That's like the 7 points of Vairocana and so forth. It's really important here. I think he mentions conduct, sila. It's something that can take a lot of work, but it's essential for the path. and bodhicitta is essential. I think sometimes people that are not as familiar with Buddhism think it's like meditation techniques and you just kind of do this technique and get this result. But for it to work in Mahayana and Vajrayana, there has to be bodhicitta. It's an essential quality. It can't be ignored. And after that, then the guru gives them empowerments.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Vows of correct conduct, sila. Is that
Yeah.
just another way of saying the monastic vows of Vinaya?
Well, it does mean the Vinaya, and not. I don't know if it means necessarily monastic, because Milarepa wasn't a monastic, for example, and yet he had a very pure Shila, very good ethical conduct. I think lay people could be included in that, but I'm just kind of speculating. I don't really have a way to tell from this if that means specifically just the monastics, but I imagine it refers to both the monastics and the lay people.
Well, it's the vows that are part of
Yeah.
the Vinaya code then.
Yes, yes. The 10 virtues, avoiding the 10 non-virtues, the Vinaya, yeah, it's all that. Okay, then meditate on compassion, sincerely thinking, oh, I feel such pity for these beings who have been wandering in the ocean of samsara, experiencing countless sufferings throughout beginningless time. They are wandering in endless samsara because they have not realized their own minds to be the essence of Buddhahood and have developed attachment to an I and a self. That's a really key point in Mahamudra is, they say that Mahamudra realization is like right on the tip of our nose, but we don't recognize it. And what keeps us from recognizing it is that egoism, the attachment to self, and so forth. Okay, then develop devotion, thinking the sublime refuges are the kind Buddhas. This guru who gives the teachings directly to me is performing the activity of a Buddha for me, and therefore is showing me even greater kindness than they do. Meditate that Vajradhara, Vajrasattva, or your root guru is upon the crown of your head. He is an appearance without a real nature and is inseparable from all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in the 10 directions, and inseparable from all the Kagyu gurus. Offer your body and possessions to him, reciting, I pay homage to the glorious sublime guru in the palace of Akanishta Dharmadhatu. He is the essence of all the Buddhas in the 3 times, and is the one who truly shows my own mind to be the Dharmakaya. I praise you and offer you my body, my possessions, and all the offerings manifested by my mind. I confess to you every bad action I've done in the past, and from now on I will not do any other bad actions. I rejoice in the good actions of all beings. I make dedication as a cause for supreme enlightenment. I pray that you remain and do not pass into nirvana. I request that you turn the wheel of the unsurpassable supreme vehicle. Grant me your blessings so that I will develop unbiased love and compassion and will directly realize the ultimate innate wisdom, just as all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas have realized it. Give me your blessings so that I will realize my illusory body to be the Nirmanakaya. Give me your blessings so that I realize my life force to be the Sambhogakaya. Give me your blessings so that I will realize my mind to be the Dharmakaya. And give me your blessing so that the 3 kayas will manifest indivisibly. So this refers to developing the unbiased love and compassion that's so essential to realization. I kind of do this aspect in my own practice where I think that everyone else is just as important with me. It's a nice way to undo egoism. And it's kind of funny because normally when thinking of things, one's natural tendency is, yeah, this is me doing this or whatever for my benefit. And then saying that reminds me all the other beings are just as important. And it kind of levels out that wrinkle, so to speak. Yeah. Any thoughts?
I would
Simple
just
prayer.
say that this is part of the Guru Yoga practice. Was part of my preliminary practice. So
Oh,
these prayers were in my preliminary practices. So this is more or less taken out of the Guru Yoga section of the preliminary practice.
do you think that the prayer that was used in the Guru Yoga comes from this text?
Well, I remember very well the last four lines here. Grant your blessing that I might realize my mind to be the Dharmakaya, et cetera, because I had to say that 100,000 times.
Well, it must have sunk in by now.
Well, I wish. I wish.
Lance, any thoughts?
Well, I think this is a great reminder of the stability that we gain from doing these practices time and time again. And I think that, what Bernie says is testament to that. And so, I really think that by engaging in these types of practices and following these instructions, whether it's from this particular Lama, this Karmapa, or from Lama Zhang or whatever, it really strengthens our practice. And that's what we really need to be doing.
Yeah. That's great. Michael, any thoughts? How about you, Curtis?
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay. Is that no thing or just nothing?
Just emptiness.
Okay.
And note that
That
Tom
sounds
is
good.
with us right now.
Okay, good.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
Are you at the
We're on
restaurant,
page
Tom?
150. Yeah.
Tom, are you at the restaurant?
Yes. I had some time and I said, hey, since I missed last time and Michael filled in wonderfully, I watched the video. Thanks, Michael. And yeah, I'm just I don't have my book, but I wanted to be with you with all my brothers. So I'm
Wonderful.
here. Uh-huh.
So we're just to catch up a little bit, we're reading through the instructions for the Mahamudra Innate Union by the third Karmapa from the 12 and 1300s. Okay.
Thanks, Pete.
Sure. Okay, and it continues, then one pointedly rests in the meditation of the Guru Yoga. If that becomes unclear or thoughts arise, meditate that the Guru Yoga melts into light and just relax in the unaltered mind. At the conclusion of the sessions, make a dedication reciting, may this be for the benefit of all beings. I think he refers to something very important here, relax in the unaltered mind. And basically, the meditation, I think, is such that you don't try to control what's in the mind or affect it or anything. You just observe whatever's in the mind. And by doing that, you kind of create a detachment from those thoughts. And not being attached to them, you're not likely to have problems, If we identify with all our thoughts, we could have problems, So let's see. In that way, just the essential posture of the body in the Guru Yoga can develop samadhi. The Vinaya tells the story of how a monkey who had watched a Pratyeka Buddha in this key physical posture taught it to 500 non-Buddhist rishis, who then attained the 5 kinds of clairvoyance, while the monkey himself attained enlightenment. Throughout the sutras and tantras appear scriptural passages telling of how devotion to the Guru and the Buddhas is the cause of enlightenment. So even though I will not relate them here, believe it. So
I like the way he just ends that sentence. I'll not relate him here, but believe it.
yeah. Well, he speaks with authority, so he could just say something like that,
I can just imagine that monkey on Vulture Peak with 100,000, bodhisattvas laid out in front of him.
Actually, Kempo told this story during the winter retreat about the
Yeah.
7 points of Vairocana and how the monkey imitated the Pratyeka Buddha, and uh, the non-Buddhist monks imitated them because people would give them donations when they sat in this posture, and they wouldn't give them donations when they didn't. So eventually they all went to the God realms as simply as a result of sitting in this posture and meditation. That's the story as he told it. Is that right, Pete? Did I forget
Yeah,
anything?
that sounds like it. Yeah, yeah.
So
Is
yeah,
that anything? I'm sorry, go ahead.
that story is from the winter retreat also. So
Yeah.
So I was just gonna be a wise guy and say, well, just fake it until you can make it.
and that's exactly right. And it's good advice. I mean, sit in the posture even if you can't meditate.
You know, and that's why I always think that, you know, even though you may not understand this, that, or the other thing about any of these practices, by engaging in them at whatever level you can, you know, helps to get you connected to it. And later on down the road, you might find that missing connection that that now you have you know, you have something stable to be able to connect to if you've even done just the sitting posture, etc., like that.
Yeah. When I took driver's ed when I was a teenager, they had us sit in a chair with a fake gas pedal and brake pedal and steering wheel, and gear shift, and just get used to sitting there and how to handle the steering wheel and use the gas pedal and the brake pedal and so forth. And then when you got a handle on it by doing that, they'd actually sit you in a car and that moved. So
So I guess when we do manjushri, we're holding the sword over our head like this. So it helps us to cut through.
yeah, yeah.
I firmly believe that's all true.
Okay, the main practice is in two parts, shamatha and vipassana. The causes of shamatha, the branch of dhyana, that is the meditation of focusing the mind. So
How do you define dhyana?
I was just going to address that.
Okay.
My understanding is dhyana simply means one-pointed meditation, but I would ask Bernie to explain that.
Well, okay, Jhana, my understanding, and I can't claim that this is correct because it's only my understanding, is that in meditation, you get to the point where maybe habitual is the wrong word, but right now, our beginners, I can't speak for anybody else. You meditate for a while and then your mind wanders, and then you meditate for a little while longer and your mind wanders. So it's always falling away. It's like trying to balance a broom on the palm of your hand. But when you get to the point of dhyana, that practice just becomes stable, so that it requires concentration. So that's my understanding. So when you get to the point where the meditation becomes stable and you don't always have to guard it and bring your mind back, that becomes jhana.
Okay.
I think that term, I have a feeling that term is one of the 8 limbs of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras.
Oh yeah, it is, but
Same term.
There's no guarantee that words have exactly the same meaning in both traditions. So you have to be a little bit careful.
Yeah. One thing it says here is that shamatha is the one branch of dhyana and the vipassana is the other branch of dhyana. So that's pretty interesting. Because I used to think of dhyana as kind of like shamatha, you know, but actually that's just one branch of it.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the shamatha is the meditation of focusing the mind. Usually we think of it as calmness, because shamatha means calm abiding, but a really key element is that focus. It's there's a kind of a laser-like focus, and then when it's developed, you can relax that laser and have a more natural yet completely focused mind. So, okay, the second meditation, The key physical posture is as before. The gaze of the eyes should be directed at a point 4 finger widths beyond the tip of the nose. Do not follow the past. Do not go forward to meet the future, but rest in present realization in a state of clarity and non-thought. So meditation being very present, it's not actually stuck in the present because the present's always moving and changing, but the meditation is steady through all that. Yeah. If you cannot rest in the one-pointed inseparability of clarity and non-thought, meditate by relying on the 6 objects. 1. Direct your gaze upon any clear visual object and focus the mind upon it. Sometimes gaze upon something like a statue, sometimes on something like a twig or pebble. Keep your cognition focused on it without interruption by any other thought. These directions, I think, come from the sutras. Even the Theravada also use these same kind of methods for shamatha. 2, when meditation on a visual object has become stable, meditate upon sounds such as the sound of water, the sound of the wind, the sounds of creatures, and so on, directing the mind to any clear sound and keeping it there. 3, when meditation on sound has become stable, focus the mind on whatever good or bad smell is experienced by the nose and meditate upon that. 4, similarly meditate by focusing the mind upon the delicious or unpleasant tastes that are experienced by the tongue. So he's going through the senses here. 5, in the same way, focus the mind on any distinct pleasant or unpleasant physical sensation that is experienced. 6, when you're able to focus to some degree upon those objects of meditation, meditate upon the phenomena that are experienced by the mind, by the 6th consciousness, which are comprised of A, composite mental phenomena, and B, non-composite mental phenomena. So he didn't actually, the list is actually going through the senses and doesn't even mention the breath, I don't think. Let's see. Yeah, it doesn't really even mention watching the breath, which is the usual technique that people are taught for shamatha. I wanted to ask Bernie about composite mental phenomena and non-composite mental phenomena.
Before we go there, wait a minute, I just got just one quick question about this. This is the first time that I've noticed an instruction to go through these 5 senses, and recognize them. And in my own experience, just I seem to do that, maybe not every single time, but I've gone through a phase where I just recognize all those different things, and then I then go to the next phase. So I thought it was interesting. I've never seen it called out like this.
Yeah. It could be
this is
training from a former life. Yeah.
This is new to me too. I've heard in Zen sometimes they meditate on sound by sitting down by the bank of a river and listening to the sound of the water as it flows in the river. But the other kinds of meditation on the other senses I've never heard of anywhere but in here. So
yeah, it's interesting too, because I think in Mahamudra you're kind of relaxing in the body and so forth, and this refers to that. The senses kind of get you in touch with that as opposed to being away from it. Like you're not meditating on something far away from the body, you're actually meditating on the experiences of the body.
Yeah, you're just bringing it into your meditation, but you're not dwelling on it. You're just kind of recognizing it. And by doing that, you're just letting it go.
And in insight meditation, meditation on the body is tightening down on the feeling of being in the moment, because of course the body's always in the present, and recognizing that anchor in our consciousness, and going through, like Lance mentioned, going through and actually inventorying the senses and what kind of information they're bringing in is sort of an exercise in opening all channels.
How about this composite mental phenomena, which presumably refers to thoughts and fleeting feelings and so forth, and non-composite mental phenomena, which I'm not sure what that is other than perhaps awareness?
I don't know. Actually, this is one point I have to say, I really don't know what they
Hmm.
mean by this in this context.
Well, as we read on, we'll see that this
Right.
is introducing shamatha calm abiding meditation.
Okay.
That this third meditation and the fourth meditation
So yeah, I
are
guess he
shamatha.
explains it later then. You're right, Lance. You're
Yeah,
right.
Right, yeah, he does. I missed
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Composite mental phenomena. The third meditation. First, samsaric phenomena, thoughts that should be eliminated, such as desire, anger, pride, the 5 kinds of wrong views, and distraction-inducing thoughts caused by the primary and secondary afflictions. Focus your awareness one-pointedly upon whichever of these appears clearly as an object of thought and meditate. Focus also on remedial thoughts, upon whatever arises in a virtuous mind, keeping the mind one-pointedly on them without interruption from any other thought. If you know this key point of mindfully focusing the mind, then whatever thought appears, there will be stability.
Your microphone muted there, Pete.
A call came in on my phone. I just had to get rid of it.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that. However, some people think they must forcefully stop thoughts.
Maybe go back
Yeah.
that last sentence in that paragraph,
Yeah.
because that's when you cut off.
Oh, okay. If you know this key point of mindfully focusing the mind, then whatever thought appears, there will be stability, unaffected by dullness or agitation. So here it's interesting. He's mentioning remedial thoughts because my understanding of Mahamudra, I didn't know if they applied remedial thoughts, in Mahamudra meditation. And it may just be the stage in which that's done. But there's negative thoughts and then there's remedial thoughts, and you just meditate on both of them and without being attached, which is interesting.
About a remedial thought, is that thinking that creates remedies? Is that like when we're trying to fix stuff that's popping up in our senses?
Yeah,
Yes.
I had to look it
Okay.
up myself, and corrective was the
Yeah.
word that I came up with. Corrective thoughts.
Hmm. Okay. However, some people think they must forcefully stop thoughts, which are things to be eliminated. This is an extra obstacle on top of the instability of their minds and makes it difficult to develop samadhi. In relation to this, from ornaments of the Mahayana Sutras, because of engaging correctly with that desire and so on, there will definitely be liberation from them. Therefore, those liberations definitely arise from them. So he's saying that your thoughts, by meditating in a non-attached way on these thoughts, you become liberated from them.
Yes. The desire to understand or to overcome desire, we must meditate on desire.
Yeah.
Or hatred or any of the other thoughts. Yes, that's what liberates them, not from escaping from them, not by burying our heads in them, but by actually engaging in them.
The best way to make an emotion or an idea dissipate is to pay attention to it.
So is that the difference between a practitioner and a non-practitioner? Is that as a practitioner, you recognize these things a little quicker and not dwell on them and attach to them? Rather than if you're a beginner, well, we're all beginners, but when you start attaching, then let them then have little babies and just go on and on and on and on and on.
Yeah, it's in the recognition. That's that moment of mindfulness.
Yeah, I think, the expression we use so many times is bringing it onto the path. Not being afraid of the things, not suppressing them, but bringing them into the light and exposing them for what they are. And we see that they're empty of their own nature. And so, we can let them go without any problem.
Also, by not reacting to them with a lot of more clashes and so forth, like pride or aversion or something like, oh, I shouldn't have that thought, I should have that thought. It's kind of like just the thought is there and just seeing it for what it is, and then it dissipates.
No self-criminations.
Right.
Saying, oh, I'm a bad person, I'm thinking of that.
And then you say, oh, well, I recognize that pride.
I remember years ago, I met some Christian folks, and they were very devout, and this guy starts telling me about how he beats up on himself because he's having sexual thoughts, and to me, I don't even remember what I replied to him, but I remember thinking to myself, well, that's part of being a human being. We've got to deal with that, especially being a young man. It's a perfectly natural thing to have. We shouldn't be flagellating ourselves or beating ourselves up because we're having natural human being thoughts.
I think desire is harder to get rid of than aversion, actually.
Well, it depends what time of day it is, I guess.
Yeah. That is what is meant by being skillful in method. Distinguishing the middle way from the extremes also says, objectlessness perfectly arises through dependence on an object. Objectlessness perfectly arises through dependence on objectlessness. Therefore, an object is proved to be the very essence of objectlessness. And that is so, as that is so, know that an object is the same as objectlessness. Okay.
So remember, this is all in the context of calm abiding shamatha meditation.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is, because just to say we're going to do shamatha meditation, calm abiding, doesn't mean that all of a sudden thoughts are going to stop coming. The thoughts continue to come, but this is how we deal with those thoughts.
Also, that he's talking here about emptiness and how it's not like some kind of blank apart and away from everything that exists. It's really the nature of everything that exists.
Right.
Therefore, first focus the mind by concentrating on an object such as a visual form through a single concentration of the six consciousnesses. So that's the consciousness related to each of the senses. The mind's focusing on anything else will cease completely. So it's being aware of what's there in your mind and body fully aware and yet non-attached and observing what's there.
Do you think that there's something, like a compartmentalization of being able to identify what's going on, in our thought, and being able to compartmentalize it and say, well, that's mundane stuff, or I've been through that before, I understand what that is, and there's no need to, overthink it, that we can just relax and let it go on its own accord.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. Non-composite mental phenomena. The fourth meditation. When that meditation is stable, meditate on the non-composite. Do not even use the six objects as basis for focusing the mind, but leave the mind just as it is without creating any thoughts whatsoever, without any concepts concerning appearances and emptiness, defects and remedies. Gaze into space with both eyes, with the body motionless, without speaking, and with a gentle and natural coming and going of the breath. So that's pretty heavy duty. I think it takes some skill to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's touching the non-dual.
you know, we've seen film of, these great practitioners and the yogis of Tibet, or, some of these different films that we've shown in Noble Film Night of these, great yogis, and they're just kind of sitting there staring, into space. It seems, they're not looking at anything and so on. And I can't say that I've ever really experienced it like that. But what I have experienced is that I get into a mindset where my eyes are open and I see things around me and I can move about with that kind of, what I think is that kind of fixation on the meditation. I don't know if those are the right words to use, but there is this, but I'm completely undisturbed by anything that I see, completely undisturbed by anything that I hear and so on like that. But yet there is this one pointed mindfulness that I become aware of, that's what I've been doing. I'm not maybe aware of it while I'm doing it, but it's when I come out of it that I say, oh, I was in that mindfulness. So my point is, does it have to be that dramatic of sitting there, your eyes open and gazing, what it seems to be, into empty space?
I mean, it sounds to me like he's talking about the same practice of Mahamudra that we're talking about, have been talking about through all this text, is just to sit with in a still posture and pay attention what is happening in your mind. I don't get anything more out of this description than that. So I mean, this is pretty much what's been said before, I think.
So whatever body position you're in is immaterial.
No, I'm not saying. I'm assuming he's talking about sitting in the meditation posture, but it just says, leave the mind just as it is, without creating thoughts whatsoever, without any concepts concerning appearances or emptiness. So it's just sit there and watch the mind and don't try to use any kind of object. That's what I get out of this paragraph.
I think what he's saying is this is a method to help you do that. To sit in meditation posture, gaze into the sky and as empty as space, and meditate on the mind that way.
Well, you can do that if you're sitting outside. You can just, they do recommend doing that, gazing at the empty sky, but it just says to leave the eyes open, gaze into space with both eyes and the body motionless. So one thing I have heard before, that if you're doing like Vipassana instead of shamatha, with shamatha you direct the eyes downward. With Vipassana, the eye gazes level, you don't look downward anymore. So that might be referring to this might be referring to that. Other than that, this really doesn't seem any different than the instructions we've had before on how to do Mahamudra, to me.
I've always taken it that it's on a continuum, between normal daily consciousness going into calm abiding and then leading to Vipassana. Like this seems like just being an inch away from Vipassana and turning the page. It's obvious that the next step is Vipassana.
Sure.
So would you say it's like just a natural progression? It just flows in whatever way that is natural to you and your environment and so on.
Well, I think
To have an object to say, well, I got to be sitting there like I've seen these other lamas sitting there. That's how it has to be done. But to say, no, you don't have to do it like that. It's where your mind is what's the important thing.
I think if you were watching a movie or something, though, it would be hard not to be distracted. Yeah.
Well, it's just an
Like,
image
say
I
I'm
saw
sitting
on a
at the
movie.
bus stop and watching traffic go by, it would be kind of distracting. But if I'm in the forest looking into the sky, it would be easier to do that.
Have you had that experience?
When I was a teenager, I used to gaze into space and try to empty my mind. You know, very beginning experience, not really a deep, Yeah.
So I like the Talopa quote that's coming up. It's almost like a koan paradox.
Yeah.
Yes, I thought that was great.
Okay, let's keep going. We'll get to it.
It's right here. Talopa has said, hold the mind as if it is space. That's pretty heavy. They say the mind is like space. It's not limited. We tend to think of the mind as a local sort of thing, like I'm over here in this part of town and you're over here in that part of town, and that's where my mind is, and that's where your mind is. But mind really ultimately is not limited like that. It's just like space, it's everywhere. Suraha has said, make it like space and bind the breath evenly. When there is complete knowledge of equality, it dissolves completely. Suraha says that when you have this ability, impermanent wavering will quickly be eliminated. And I think he's referring to the breath there. When you're meditating deeply like that, the breath becomes very, very shallow, so to speak, and then just dissolves. And it's the yogi is sitting there, and the person's sitting next to him thinks they're not even breathing; they're just like absorbing oxygen or something. But that's known as a yogic reality. Yeah.
Well, I think where it says make it like space, if you replace
Yeah.
the word it with mind, then it really, it directs your point of view to what's being said here. Make mind like space and bind it to the breath evenly. That makes sense.
Yeah. So you're saying that the mind dissolves completely.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Oh, would you say when there's complete knowledge of equality, it dissolves completely? I was thinking of the breath dissolving, which is a yogic phenomena, but it could be the mind is dissolving.
Yes, I think it's the mind. The breath
Okay.
is just, you know, it's just a way of being able to express our dualistic nature.
Hmm. Okay.
I mean, really, in meditation, I think that it's the breath is the last vestige of our dualistic nature. We're really in meditation. We're in that one point in mindfulness beyond the dualism, but yet we're breathing. But if we can bind that, if we can let that breath just be even and not conscious, and the breath really settles down, you hardly even start. You're hardly even breathing. Your heart rate
Yeah.
slows down.
Yes.
Everything slows down. All the body functions slow down. But meanwhile, it's the mind that is open. It's
Yeah.
that's the experience. So that complements this complements hold the mind. If it's like space, then Saraha says, make mind like space and bind the breath evenly. Blah blah blah. Then it goes on.
The stillness is very important because, like when they talk about the stillness of water, I've been up to the Lake George up in New York State when I was young, and I was so amazed because the water was crystal clear. You could walk out to your waist or whatever and just look down and see pebbles and stuff that you're standing on, completely crystal clear water. And they say for the mind to be like that, it has to be very still. So that stillness allows for that awareness to expand.
Yeah, but we can't force it. We can't make that happen. It has to happen naturally.
So if we sit down and say, now we're gonna sit to meditate, just that thought, just that one thought is wrong.
Binds you up.
So if we're concentrating on doing whatever we're doing, whatever task it may be, if we're completely focused on that one task, we are in meditation. Granted, we might be moving, we might be completely, we might be somewhere else, not sitting, but we're still in meditation, right? Because
I
you
think
remember
it-
when,
I think your mind has to be focused on a virtuous action. If you're butchering a pig, I don't think that could be considered meditation.
it's like the
Oh,
old lady
that-
that went to Buddha and asked Buddha, what is meditation? The Buddha said, well, concentrate on whatever task, like washing your clothes. You concentrate on what your hands are doing.
I think one
of
pointed
meditation.
flow and activity is a form of meditation. Yeah.
And then
Yeah,
what is Chud practice? Is that
It's
not
where you-
chopping up the body?
Chopping up your own body, chopping up not somebody else's body.
Well, isn't that just a point of view?
Oh, no, for the other person, not for the other person.
It's only about.
Well, Thich Nhat Hanh says you can easily meditate while you're washing a teacup as while you're taking a poo. You know,
It maybe depends upon the person. Depends upon the person.
Well, a very advanced yogi would be in meditation all the time while they're walking.
Sure.
Very advanced, but for like an ordinary person to realize that, it would be very difficult to meditate while walking around and talking to people and so forth.
I mean, isn't it important what, it's not so important what the outside of the body is doing, but what the actual inside, what you're doing, the focusing and you know, if you can be in the outside talking and doing whatever, but as long as you're focusing from the inside, isn't that what really counts? So shouldn't the
Yeah.
outside reflect the inside?
Yeah, I think what the Karmapa is saying here is that these postures and so forth help you to do that. And then once you accomplish that, then you can walk around and talk and still be in samadhi, so to speak.
I think we ought to read on because maybe Pete's right.
Well, let's see what he says then. This is what is to be understood when the perfection of wisdom also says, to make the perfection of wisdom your practice is to make space your practice. If you meditate in that way, you will have good stability and will establish an excellent cause for the development of dhyana and shamatha. In order to understand these aspects in detail, read my teachings on the 9 methods of mental stability and the 11 mental engagements. Shamatha's cause is reliance on correct conduct. Its essence is to be devoid of afflictions and thoughts. Its conditions are the creation of an exceptional mental stability. Its benefits are the subjugation of coarse afflictions and sufferings. The above was the stage of stabilizing the unstable mind.
So there's a cause, there's an essence, there are conditions, and there are benefits. To be able to analyze the session, the meditation, the experience with those terms and apply it to this paragraph, I think is excellent.
It's interesting. He says that the cause is correct reliance on correct conduct.
Well, you were just mentioning that, Bernie.
No, you mentioned it earlier. You were the one who mentioned it.
Oh,
That
okay.
conduct is important before you engage in meditation.
Oh, right, yeah.
I think that's a very interesting point. Shamatha's cause is reliance on correct conduct. That is the rejoinder to anyone that is thinking meditation is going to do all these wonderful things for them, but is getting no moral teaching.
Right. And
The McMindfulness, you know,
Yeah.
critique is that, you know, you're trying to learn these meditation things and you're not getting any moral teaching.
the thing about the moral ethics that I consider is one of the six paramitas. And the six paramitas are like the foundation of Mahayana Buddhism. And of course, in the Theravada, it's also very important.
Wasn't it also, doesn't that come from the Hinayana? Isn't that the basis of the Hinayana is the moral conduct, the discipline?
It's interwoven in all the great traditions. McMindfulness is just trying to strip out some technique from the great traditions and not make people have to do anything, not give them any guidance on right and wrong, on what's good.
Yeah.
You know, meditate to success, meditate to be a better athlete, meditation, everything except change yourself towards holiness.
McMindfulness is the Buddha has been filtered out. It's, you know, it's for those that prefer a secular approach, but it's sort of it makes weak coffee.
Even a secular approach can talk about the moral teachings. There are teachings out there that just don't have any moral dimension whatsoever, but want you to learn how to meditate.
Well, that's like Taoism.
Well, I'm not sure. Well, I don't know. I have no idea what Taoism teaches really. But I think all the great religious traditions teach the importance of morality. In the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, as you mentioned, that's the first section. They talk about conduct. So it's in all the religious traditions. So not just Buddhism. That the foundation of meditation is decent conduct.
In McMindfulness, there's no view whatsoever of this is how you're going to become a saint, how you're going to encounter ultimate realities. It's just it just completely is focused on worldly objectives.
Yeah, it's focused on worldly benefit, which is fine as far as it goes. It's just not a spiritual practice at that point.
And it's not going to have the depth that comes with spiritual practice.
Right. I mean, in karate, for years they have students do a little meditation before they do their karate practice. And if you ask them why, they're not going to have a very spiritual understanding of the purpose of it. But it's of some benefit, but it isn't of tremendous benefit.
Does that come from the Shaolin origins of karate?
No, it's just comes from traditional Japanese conduct, I think, because karate is really the creation of this guy in the 19th century. So he just wanted to teach this stuff. I mean, his motivation was to make people better, as well as teaching the martial arts, but was kind of secularized because of the attitude of Japan in the 19th century was to be more westernized. So
do you think that there's a egocentrism to this, that there is there's a focal point? Oh, this is what I want to be, this is who I need to be, this is who I am, this is who I am. That can happen to spiritual practitioners too. Spiritual practitioners can have pride and egotism just as well as secular practitioners, but probably there's no antidote for it in the secular practice, whereas there is an antidote for it in the spiritual practice.
I think there's another thing to be said too. If you don't have grounding in the moral teaching, you can take a little bit of a moral thought, or I should say a little bit of a moral concept, and really twist it in a perverted way. For example, people saying, well, you're going beyond right and wrong. Meditation is you go beyond right and wrong. Therefore, I can do whatever I want and it won't matter. It completely obliviates, any real sense of karma. That's even worse. No
Well-
moral teaching is one thing, but to obliviate, causation, that's the foundation of moral conduct. And some of those quote new age teachings out there are practically amoral or sociopathic even. It's just glorification of the ego, power driven, power motivated, sex, money, it's just the opposite of any sort of morality.
Isn't that sometimes where we apply the word cultism?
Yeah. Well, fortunately, we have the correct teachings. I'm not sure it's necessary to focus on the incorrect teachings. The correct teachings are here in this text. And if anybody ever asks us about it, we can correct people. I think that's the important point. Of course, there are people out there who are mistaken about everything. There are people who think that the more people you kill, the braver the person you are and the more heroic you are. So there's no end to perverted teachings out there. I mean, there's no end to them. It's just that we have to uphold the correct teachings.
Well, that's the barbarian view.
Yeah, that's a barbarian view. The more people you kill, the better. The more heroic you are. So
I think this is also important to emphasize to people that are ignorant about Buddhism. People don't understand Buddhism, and they, the foundation is righteousness, to use a Western term, right conduct, doing good. A lot of people don't understand that, and it needs to be emphasized to some Westerners, some Christians particularly, that Buddhism is fundamentally moral.
sure, if somebody is mistaken about that, for sure.
But do you think that Buddhism in that regard is unique?
No, it's not.
All the great religions have this moral foundation. I'll say never survive as great traditions.
Yeah, there was a opinion, I think, in the early days about Zen, that Zen was beyond morality, but I think that idea has long since perished. But back in the 50s, people thought that Zen was beyond morality, but you don't run into that attitude in Buddhism these days. I think all the traditions emphasize the importance of morality.
I got to call out Tom. I've been working with the guy who was from a non-denominational Christian church, and they do a lot of helping people get rid of stuff, and they give a lot of stuff away. Very, very altruistically motivated. Anyway, when he met Tom, he later told me, he said, he's the most Christ-like person I've met in a long time.
That's great. That's great. So, well, sure. I think people in all traditions can recognize spiritual qualities, even if they're coming from somebody in another tradition. So, I mean, I've certainly met a lot of Christians who I've admired for their conduct, for sure.
Yeah, I have too.
All right, so then just to put another underline under this, that this section here again, this fourth meditation was shamatha meditation. Was talking about shamatha.
Sure.
The third and fourth meditation is shamatha meditation, and then this next one, the fifth meditation, is what gives rise to the vipassana.
Would you like to read, Lance?
One more thing, too. This after that sense about correct conduct, his essence is to be devoid of afflictions and thoughts. Its conditions are the creation of an exceptional mental stability. Its benefits are the subjugation of coarse afflictions and sufferings. That's separate from moral conduct. The point we've been talking about, but it's another point that's not recognized in a lot of this mindfulness stuff. They don't correctly identify, that certain afflictive emotions are the problem. They just think, oh, learn how to concentrate more and you'll be a better athlete. Well, if they were focusing on the affliction, they say, you got to get anger, desire. They point to the afflictions, and they don't even point to the afflictions that much. It's almost incidental to learning meditation.
Well, sure, you'll find errors in all sorts of people who don't really understand what meditation is all about. And it's unfortunate. All you can do is uphold the correct view.
And people came by the temple regularly talking about wanting to learn meditation, and they thought Buddhism where they could learn meditation. And when you started to talk about moral conduct, you could see they were just like, that's not what I'm here for.
When we were meeting at the Medicine Buddha Sangha in Baltimore, people would come all the time and they said they wanted to learn to relax and so forth, which meditation is relaxing as part of it, but there was not much interest beyond that.
Yeah, that's the secular understanding. We've got to, okay. When I started meditating, everybody except people in their particular traditions thought it was all nonsense. Now everybody accepts meditation, but they only understand it in a shallow way of relaxation and being as good for your mind as exercises for your physical body. It's kind of a goal-oriented thing, what's the word I'm looking for? Self-fulfillment or something like that, or something like self-development. It's self-development. It's another form of self-development. So it's fine, but it's a little shallow. I don't know if it's better than it was back when nobody except the people in those particular traditions cared about meditation. It's just something we have to live with. That's just the way people are now. And you work with that. You have to work with people where they are, whether they think meditation is only for idiots or whether they think it's good, but in a very shallow way. That's just where we are today.
All right, you want to continue on to Vipassana?
Oh, for sure.
Okay. Anyone care to read for a while? I could use a reading break. Or I'll read if no one wants to read.
I'll read.
Okay.
Glorious Talopa has said, Kye ho, this is the self-knowing wisdom. It transcends the path of speech. It cannot be experienced by the mind. I, Talopa, have nothing to teach. Know that it is revealed to you by yourself. This means that having now stabilized the mind, examine the manifestation of the five consciousnesses within the state of clarity and non-thought. Do thoughts created by the form, sound, smell, taste, physical sensation, and mental phenomena appear as external objects of perception? Or do they come from the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, or the body? When you examine like this, you will see that the thoughts do not come from any of these. You will gain the certainty that the six objects in the five senses are naturally clear, but non-conceptual. The consciousness of the five senses, the visual consciousness that perceives form, the auditory consciousness that perceives sound, the olfactory consciousness that perceives smells, the gustatory consciousness that perceives taste, and the tactile consciousness that perceives physical sensations appear instantaneously in dependence on the sensory faculties and objects, and they are naturally clear and non-conceptual. Therefore, from among the six consciousnesses, that of the mind alone needs to be thoroughly examined. You want me to keep on going? You want to talk about that right now? I want to discuss that.
Well, it's interesting. I think in Buddhism, there's a basic sort of diagram of the relation of the mind to the body's senses. So you have the objects of consciousness, you have the faculty of consciousness, you have the sense organ. Actually, I think that comes before that. You have the object, the sense organ, the faculty, and then the mind itself. which is kind of a very basic way of describing these things, but it's interesting. It's complete. I mean, it's complete, but kind of in a fundamental way.
So it seems to be saying here that you take an individual sensation, let's say you're sitting and suddenly there's a sound, and you look and see where the sound is, whether it's in your physical sense organ or the ear in that case, or whether it's in your head or in your thoughts, or where is that particular sound that you just heard. Do you think I understand that correctly, or does somebody understand it differently?
I think it's just a spontaneous occurrence that we are processing. The ear hears the sound, the nose smells the smell, etc. But it's the mind that is processing that and bringing that, giving that some kind of meaning. But it's like it's like film. If you got a camera, the camera sees something, you close the shutter or whatever you do, and then that image is then imprinted on the film. Well, the film in this case is an analogy for the mind, and then we can process that film and make some sense of it the same way that we do with our mind. The mind processing that image that it saw, the sound that it heard, etc., and so on. So it's really that basic. It's that elemental. I think that this needs to be put into a little bit of a broader context to help, and that is these are the 6 consciousnesses of the body, the everyday consciousnesses. But then there is the consciousness of the I me mind of the individual, and then there's the alaya consciousness. And later in the chapter, he goes to those 2 points. So, but right now we're looking at this very elementary wise.
Okay. Now, in shamatha, if you suddenly hear a sound during the meditation, you just note it. Are we doing anything different than that in this particular 5th meditation or not?
It says here he's paying attention to the mind more than the sound.
Okay. So what
it's like
should you do when
there's these sensory sounds and so forth, but says that of the mind alone needs to be thoroughly examined.
So is the mind disturbed by that particular occurrence?
And if it is, then you can observe that disturbance from a detached point of view.
Now what it says here, do the thoughts created by sound, just to abbreviate, come from the ear or the body? From the ear, when you examine like this, you will see the thoughts do not come from any of these. So it's saying that when you look at the sound, you see that it doesn't come from the ear. At least that's what I get from that paragraph.
Well, they get into that more in the next couple paragraphs.
Okay. You want me to continue on, or you want to?
They're just sensory instruments.
Right. So what it's saying is that you look at the sound and you see that it's in the mind and not in the ear.
Yeah. So later on, it goes on and talks about the ayatanas, the sense fields.
Okay. So if you want me to continue reading, Pete, or you want to take over again?
Unless someone else wants to read, or
Well, I'll continue reading.
Okay.
Just for this one section.
Okay.
When the mind is directed towards phenomena, such as the consciousness of the 5 senses, it is naturally clear and non-conceptual in every instant. Therefore, there is no delusion within the 6 consciousnesses themselves.
Okay.
When the previous consciousness has ceased and the subsequent consciousness has yet to appear, that which is the present instant appears clearly. Therefore, this relative truth is not to be rejected. Although the present consciousness is clear, It does not exist as a shape, and it does not exist as a color. Creators such as self, fate, Shiva, Brahman, atoms, unperceivable externals, Purusha, and so on, have not created it. It is devoid of a real nature, and therefore the ultimate truth is not rejected. So we have a contrast here between relative truth and ultimate truth. So it says here that the present consciousnesses are clear. They appear clearly, and they are without delusion, right? That's what it says, right?
Yeah.
And they're not to be rejected. So you don't reject what appears through the senses, and you also don't theorize that they have a shape or a color, or they are caused by Shiva, Brahman, atoms. I would add, for modern science, the brain, and so on. They're devoid of a real nature, and that's the ultimate truth. So
I think a basic idea with this is that all the objects that arise are dependent upon the mind. Just as a flower is dependent upon sunlight and soil and so forth, everything that appears is dependent on the mind.
Anybody else have a comment on these paragraphs?
Well, I think what Bernie said and what Pete said are both right, but I think the point of the mind that's in the brain, the intellect, recognizing these things and just recognize them for as they are, that sound, that sight, whatever, but it's not being processed until the next step, when it becomes, how does it relate to me?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the next part. Otherwise, it's just a sound that's just getting processed. It's just a sight.
Okay, so you think the meditation is just to stop with the immediate awareness and not to
go any further with it.
Go any further with it. Okay.
Right.
Okay, that's a good point.
But these are with the sense fields. But the things with our five senses that's being processed in the brain. But then the next thing is, what about thoughts that arise up that are independent of these sense fields?
Right. He's not talking about them yet, it doesn't seem.
Right, but I'm making the point now to differentiate that, because that helps us to say, oh, those things are just happening. They're just appearances. I don't need to pay any attention to them. I can compartmentalize in them as just mundane things.
Okay, good point. Anybody else have something to say about these paragraphs about directing the mind towards phenomena of the senses? Going once, going twice. Okay, I'll continue reading then. Even appearances and emptiness are inseparable. They can appear as anything, can be called anything, and therefore are completely liberated from being itself or other. This is what you should realize. That sounds like an important point, but I'm not sure I understand it. Does anybody want to try to explain these two sentences? So appearances and emptiness are inseparable. They can appear as anything, can be called anything, and therefore are completely liberated from being itself or other. That sounds profound, but I'm not sure I understand.
Well, it's just defining phenomenal nature.
Right.
And it's just phenomenal. We have no explanation for it. We don't need to make an explanation for it.
What it says can appear as anything and be called anything.
Right. It's completely, dependent on other things. It doesn't have its own nature, so it's therefore empty.
Anybody else have any it strikes me as being a very profound couple of lines. Does anybody else have any other comment on it or
Yeah,
explanation? Yeah.
I think it is profound, and I see the Buddhist teachers doing this over and over again. They all of a sudden they'll just go to the ultimate statement of truth and just drop it in like it's just the next step in the reasoning. But they've really made a whole lot of leaps here. Sure, appearance and emptiness are inseparable. Well, if I figured that out, I'm a Buddha. They talk about it like it's just they just drop it in there without saying
No, but
they're giving the highest view.
But we experience it now. We're already, we have that Buddha nature, it's true, but we're not looking at it from that point of view. We're still looking at it from an ordinary human being's point of view. But we still need to be able to, but here we have the benefit of connecting it to that which is yet to come.
Okay, do you think that understanding follows from the meditation that's described in the previous paragraphs in this section?
Well, that's the whole point of Vipassana. It's insight. Vipassana, another way of saying it is insight meditation.
So how do you
Just like shamatha is calm abiding, it's what arises up. Is insight into what arises up, what's happening around us. Do we pay attention to that? Do we pay attention to what rises up?
So how do you think we get from A to B? Because I think Curtis is right. It makes it sound simple as 1 + 1 is 2.
This is why we need teachers.
Because ordinary beings tensor calculus here.
Because ordinary beings may not be able to recognize that. This is why the Buddha is the Buddha. Because it was the Buddha's genius that was able to articulate this for us. This is why we're following the Buddha and we're not following one of ourselves. Because we don't have that ability to be able to see that without the help of the teacher, without the help of the guru, without the help of the Buddha. But once it's revealed to us, then we begin to see that over and over again. At first we deny it. It goes to those 4 thoughts, that we were talking about before. It's so simple, but we don't see it. So now we've got a mechanism to help us to recognize it. Now it's up to us to keep testing it until we finally realize, oh yeah, this is what's going on.
Okay.
Look at the next sentence.
What's that?
Instead of investigating.
Okay.
So we're not investigating phenomenon, we're investigating the emptiness and realizing that emptiness is not.
Okay, this is my guess. I'm thinking when he talks about appearances here, he means about the meditation just of the 5 senses that he was describing in the previous paragraphs. So what happens is that you do this kind of meditation repeatedly, habitually, eventually you'll come to the understanding that the appearances, that is the 5 senses, and emptiness are inseparable.
That's
my understanding of it.
The Karmapa included a clarifying thought here. It is not within the experience of the afflicted mind's thoughts. Therefore, there is nothing to teach you until you have experienced it for yourself. That's in the next paragraph.
Okay, let's go to the next paragraph.
And it starts off, it says, this is self-knowing.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
This is self-knowing, meaning it is the unmistaken realization of that which is self-knowing is wisdom. Did I parse that correctly? Meaning that the unmistaken realization of that which is self-knowing is wisdom. So you realize unmistaken realization of self-knowing is wisdom because it knows the primordially true nature. Ordinary beings who are like children don't know how to describe that direct perception. It is not within the experiences of the afflicted mind's thoughts. Therefore, there is nothing to teach you until you have experienced it for yourself. This is also said in the Doha. Don't disturb water or a lamp's flame. They are naturally clear. I neither perform going and coming nor them. Okay, anybody want to comment on this paragraph? Lance, you want to keep going? Explain
Well, I
what
think I think, you know, this is the best way to explain it. What I did was very coarse, you know, but you know, it's there for us to recognize, but we on our own we wouldn't recognize it unless it was pointed out to us. Now it's being pointed out to us, so now we have to process it. We have to experience it ourselves.
That's
So
a practice.
this is the self-knowing. You know, this is the well, I forget the word now. The gnosis. This is the gnosis of experience of realizing that we are Buddha, that we are realizing that phenomenal nature is empty, realizing all these truths for ourselves. Not that we're memorizing it from a book, but we're actually experiencing it ourselves. And this is what can drive us crazy. You know, this is the point of when, you know, we can go through a period of meditation where we think we've lost our minds because nothing makes any sense to a rational mind, to an ordinary human mind anymore. Everything's upside down, everything's inside out. But we have to experience that ourselves.
Okay, here's a question for everybody, not just for Lance. Is this self-knowing separate from the experience of the five senses? Is it identical to it, or is it related to it in some way?
I think it's just kind of observing it.
So it's the mind that observes the six senses is
Yeah, the
self-knowing?
awareness. Yeah.
The
Well, there's
awareness, which is paying attention to the six senses, is the self-knowing.
Well,
Yeah.
there's two parts to it because there's two truths. You know, there's the truth of the relative, and there's the truth of the absolute. And the self-knowing is being able to differentiate or being able to recognize that. Not necessarily differentiate, but to be able to just recognize the two truths.
So self-knowing is the recognition of the two truths.
Yeah, I think so.
And
It's
how,
not expressed in this way, but I'm taking that out now a step further.
so how does that occur during the practice of meditation?
Because that's vipassana. That's the insight that's coming up. Wow, I never had that thought before. Let me think about that thought. You know, and then we start thinking in terms of similes. We start looking, well, it's like this, no, it's like that. Oh, it's like this sometimes, but it's like that other times, and so on. And we start evaluating with our intellectual mind something that can only be experienced through our heart mind.
Right. Okay. So how does meditation lead to this self-knowing?
Because we've exhausted all the other possibilities.
Okay, that's
I think
good
it's
answer.
because
interesting.
I think
point
it's
of view.
because when we're deeply rooted in shamatha, that when there's that stillness, that emptiness, then when things arise, we experience them very differently because we're not bound to them. We have an insight into them because we have that sense of Buddha nature while we're having the experience. It is not an intellectual examining. It is a different kind of way of experiencing phenomena, the senses, etc. And it yields insight. But I think the language trips us up so much because it's, insight meditation. Examine your thoughts. It sounds like an intellectual process. And there is some intellect involved, but it fundamentally is about having the awareness of the Buddha nature amidst the phenomenon and experience them differently, with awareness of the phenomenon very different than when we're bound to the phenomenon.
So it's your thing, it's sort of like opposed to the awareness of phenomena. It's not the awareness of phenomena. I can conceptualize this two ways. One is that the mind is identical with the perceptions, and the other, it's what's left over when you look at the perceptions. There has to be something more, and that something more is the self-knowing mind. I'm not
that's
saying either of those is correct.
yeah.
I'm just saying those are the two ways I can conceptualize it.
But that second one is in line with what Dolpopa taught, and they were saying that the third Karmapa was an associate and agreed with Dolpopa.
So you think it's the self-aware mind is separate from the perception?
Pure awareness. Pure awareness.
Pure awareness. So
Yeah.
it's what thinks is what you're saying.
I wouldn't say thinks. I would say aware. Be what is
It's
aware.
what is aware then. It's what
Thinking is an
aware.
object of awareness.
So there are objects of awareness, and then there's the mind, which is aware of the object.
Right.
But
That's what you
but that awareness, what we're talking about, is non-conceptual. It can't be conceptualized. It can't
Right.
be intellectualized. And this
Right.
is the point, going back to the story of the Buddha. This is the Buddha having awakened from his meditation and then pacing up and down for 49 days trying to figure out a way to express this to his students. And all he says is, I can't tell you what it is, but I can tell you how I got there. You have to get there yourself. This is how I did it. You can use this. If you got another way, go for it.
Okay.
But this is how I did it. And then we're left to process this ourselves, to engage in this ourselves, to have that experience ourselves.
So, but
It's that simple.
as it says, it's not within the experience of the afflicted mind's thoughts. So that means
That's right.
at least I'm not going to get there tonight.
But it's not in the
Because-
afflicted mind. We have to get beyond the
Yeah.
afflicted mind. We have to get
Right.
into the boomies, beyond the boomies to get
So
there.
my mind tonight is just filled with afflicted thoughts, so I'm not going to realize it tonight.
Well, that's yes, and that's not to be negative about it, but that's right.
Sure.
We're analyzing it from an afflicted mind's point of view.
From an intellectual point of view.
From an
rather than
intellectual point of view.
experience, Right.
Let me read this last paragraph on that page, then we'll be ready to
Sure.
start a new page. Keho, this is self-knowing. Other than that, there is nothing that can be directly taught. Do not be deluded about this.
Yes.
And do you want to do the next verse too? That elaborate.
Yeah.
It's 8:30 if you want to keep going.
You want to keep going because it's after 8:30.
Oh, really? We used up all our time. Sorry. Ran over.
All right. Well, I think
Discussion is what it's about.
okay. What's that?
I was saying discussion is what it's about. It's great that we discuss it. If we get through the book
Absolutely.
a paragraph at a time, we'll really learn something.
Absolutely. This is great, and
Yeah.
and what we're learning here is the process, how to do this, and it's being spelled out for us. And it's that circle that we go around over and over by these different masters explaining the same thing in different terms to help us to understand a little bit better, to be able to realize it's up to us to be able to experience this ourselves.
Mhm.
We can take all these instructions and then we've got to engage.
That's right.
So if we can do it in this lifetime, do another lifetime. It's taken us lifetimes to get to where we are. But the lifetime is just another one of these concepts. The lifetimes is emptiness.
Okay. So
So we come back next time, and Bernie starts next time, and
next time I'm going to
so maybe we start
put you
off.
to the meat grinder because this gets really complicated.
So maybe we start off reviewing this fifth meditation again.
We'll cover a little bit of it. I
Yeah,
think.
to
We'll
get
have
to, we got to get.
I'll back up to the point where it says this is a self-knowing, because that's the transition point, I think.
All right.
Yeah, we'll start with that next time.
Does
Okay.
that all sound okay with everybody?
Yeah.
Sure.
All right. So the next time is
2 weeks. 2 weeks.
looks like February 1st.
April Fool's. No, it's April Fool's Day, right? No.
No,
That's April.
February.
It's April.
April 1st.
That's
Okay.
a good one,
February
Bernie.
1st day.
It's deja vu all over again.
It's not Groundhog Day either, so
All right. So
February 2nd, right?
So I guess we're going to have to get into a mode that we're not going to have excuse me, Michael with us for the whole time.
Okay.
And we missed Adrian not being here tonight, and Tom came in a little bit late, but it was good that he was here. So that's great. But we'll continue
Okay.
the best we can.
Okay.
And Tom, I want to thank you for taking the time to join.
Oh, like I said, my heart's always with you guys. Physically, I might not be there, but I'm always with you guys.
Okay. Dedication.
Sure.
By the virtues collected in the three times, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate word of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Sri Kumpa Ratna Shri, who is omniscient, Lord of the Dharma, Master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, meditation, until the end of samsara. Om, Ah, Om, Om, Ah, Om, Om, Ah, Om. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings. Thank you, guys.
All right.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
See you all. All
Namaste.
right.
Hey,
Be
Lance, how's your back doing?
Yeah, how's your back?
It's coming along. It's
Okay.
it's long and slow, but it's we're working at it.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate whatever blessings you can send.
Okay, I'll remember to pray for you then, sure.
Thank you. Yes.
And dedicate merit.
So send some heat. Finding heat is working really good.
Okay. Okay.
Just remember, when you put that heat on there and it cools off, it hurts more. It does.
It needs to be moist heat. Moist heat.
Okay.
Be
Thank you.
careful.
Wrap something moist around the hot thing. Otherwise, it's not good. You need moist heat.
Maybe a sauna would be good if there's a local sauna.
Sounds
Wrap a
great.
wet towel around it. That's
We're gonna take a hot bath.
There you
All right,
go.
guys.
Good night, brothers.
Thank you. All right. See
Night.
y'all later. All right. Bye-bye.
Tom, when are you going home tonight?
Oh, whenever I get there.
What about Lucy? You bringing Lucy up?
Oh man, she's probably like just totally angry. Yeah. It's just like, ugh.
All right.
Yeah. You know, it is what it is. But yeah.
Hey, show us around. Show us around a little bit, real quick, Tom.
Okay, sure.
All right, well, I'm gonna go, so I'll let you guys close it out, but I gotta go.
Okay, Lance.
All right. Good night.
Good night.
Alright.
Well, can you guys see?
Yeah.
So that's it's got street